Hello and welcome to another edition of your favourite podcast, Insane in the Membrane.
Insane in the Membrane.
Here we are again. It's your old pal Wilson, falling into your ears thanks to the wonderful work of producer Paul. Thank you again, producer Paul, for making this, at least getting it out there. It wouldn't get out there otherwise, just be me chatting to a laptop and going no further. So thank you, producer Paul. What a legend. Before we begin, listen, we do us a favour, right, and become a patron. I know it sounds like I'm begging, right? I'm not begging, I'm kind of begging. Not really begging, just would like it if you could help us out, just to keep it going. Just, you know, all the money that we make goes back into the podcast, and that's it really. So if you could do that for us, it's a couple of quid a month, that's all. And for your money, you get over 50 archive interviews. You get early access to our filmed interviews that we're doing now. So go to patreon.com/membrane podcast or click the Linktree link in the podcast description and all of my social media bio. So if you go to I am Rich Wilson on Instagram, in the bio there you'll see Linktree. Click on that. That will take you to my website. That'll take you to everything that producer Paul's doing. Takes you to our Patreon page. Takes you to all the things that we're doing. It's wonderful technology that it will benefit you no end, and it will benefit us too if you jump on and become a patron. That would be really nice. That's it. Just bung us a couple of quid. You won't even notice it. I know it's tricky at the minute. It's a couple of quid, and we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to our patrons that we already have. We love you. Well done for being on board. We really appreciate it. There will be things coming. There's things we're working on that we'll be giving to our patrons as well. So there are things happening, and so stay tuned for that. So thank you very much. Also, this week, as part of our Edinburgh season of episodes, which is where our guests are part of taking shows up to the Edinburgh Festival, we've got Glenn Moore. Glenn Moore. Oh, I know. I love Glenn Moore. Met Glenn a few years ago when we were doing a gig in Exeter, of all places, and I was just immediately struck by him. I thought he was great. Really made me laugh. Lovely dude. And we talked about it in the episode when we met, and he's a lovely guy, really easy to chat to. This episode really rocketed by. Most of them do, actually. I don't think we've ever had an issue with anyone. It's always felt pretty cool. I don't mind talking to people, actually. I like it, so I find it quite easy to do so. I think I can count on one hand. I think there's one episode, but there was one episode that we recorded and we just went, you know what, I don't think that should go out. It wasn't any chemistry between myself and the guest, and it wasn't a lot of fun for either of us, I don't think. And we just went, you know what, let's just bin that one. And you're listening there going, oh, we want that. Tell you what, give us 20 grand and we'll release it. You can have that one. So yeah, that's the only time. The rest of the time, everyone's been pretty cool. I love talking to people. I'm even one that didn't work. I was honoured to have that particular guest on. It just didn't work out that time. But, you know, they've all been brilliant going forward. And this one in particular is a brilliant one. Glenn Moore is a lovely lad. You'll have a great time listening to him. I'm going to stop wittering on. So coming up in a minute is Glenn Moore.
A podcast from producerpaul.co.uk.
Insane in the Membrane.
What was it you used to do? When I met you, when we did Exeter, what was it you were doing?
So I used to be a newsreader. So I used to read the news on like LBC and places like that, like Classic FM and stuff like that. And it was just, honestly, trying to juggle that with stand up late at night, because it was like breakfast radio. I still work in breakfast radio now, but it's like a co-presenter at Absolute, and that's a lot more fun, and it's like a comedy radio station, and it's at least good fun, and it's something to look forward to getting up to. But just like going from reading about, you know, having to talk about terror attacks and stuff at 4 a.m, and then rushing to places like Extra or whatever, and then rushing straight back overnight every single night of the week was just can't believe I used to do it. Awful.
I think. Well, by the way, this is it. We just start chatting. By the way.
Okay.
This is the thing. When I met you, and you were doing that. You'd rushed. We got to Exeter. And then we had to fiddle around, and then you did your gig, and then you were just straight back out the door.
Yeah, it was me, you, Eddie Brooks. We'd driven on the way there. I think I was opening, and I think I did about 18 minutes and just had to get like the last train back or to get the megabus back overnight or something like that. Because I think I was working at LBC. I think the shifts used to start at like 4:30 a.m. and I'd be reading news from like 5. So what I'd usually do is I'd get a train straight into like Leicester Square, and I'd sleep on the sofas in Leicester Square, in the building. Which, despite being like pretty soundproof glass. Friday night in Leicester Square, the amount of like chanting and songs and vomit permeates that, and it's so hard to get to sleep because it's one of those, because it's like quite a modern building as well. It doesn't have like traditional light switches that you can turn on and off. It's like permanent light. It's like motion sensor light switches. So I had to like walk through like Ocean's 11 like as slowly as possible if I wanted to be able to sleep, because if I set the lights off, then it was bright like hospital lighting for at least an hour, and occasionally you get woken up by like the light coming on, which just meant rats. That was the only thing it could mean. Yeah, because because there was no one else around. It was I used to live like that every day.
How did that? I mean, your mind must have been scrambled.
Yeah, it's one of these. Like people always say this about stuff like stand-up, but when you look back at the first few years and when you started, you just gobsmacked at why on earth you ever did it or how you managed it. And at the time, there just wasn't it was all like kind of known in my professional life to have that sort of scheduling. And so I was just kind of used to it. And honestly, I think your brain just sort of gets sort of wired to it after a while. Like, you always say like, certain politicians and stuff, or always manage to sleep on like 4 hours sleep or whatever. And if you have 4 hours sleep, you go, how can you do anything on that amount of sleep? But actually, if you did that for a few weeks, you sort of get into that sort of mindset. And I think lockdown, suddenly having like a decent amount of sleep and sort of staying in, made me suddenly think I'd never be able to do that again. Never. No. And then as soon as I was forced kind of back into doing that again over the last sort of 18 months or so, it was like, oh no, I think you do just get used to it. Your body adapts to whatever situation. And so my body adapted to sleeping on very thin sofas in Leicester Square. I think.
With the chants of the drunkards outside.
Yeah.
As your lullabies.
But also I think when you sort of, if you're working that hard, you don't think. You don't ever stop to think, what the hell am I doing? Because all you're doing is checking your diary, sort of going, what is the next thing I've got to rush to? It was just permanently rushing. It felt like every single day was like a really low stakes version of Uncut Gems. Just like constant stress, and me all times thinking, I'm not successful enough to be this stressed. Like I'm not successful enough to be this busy. I'm running between 20 unpaid things a day. There's no like why am I doing any of this? But if I'd stopped to think that, then I probably would have stopped altogether, I think.
I know what you mean. Yes. Even now, there's still, it doesn't matter what sort of level you get onto, there's still things that you still have to, you still have to put yourself out for in order to achieve something later on. Like there's some gigs I've just picked up I've not done before, and I have to work clean. And when I said, yeah, that's fine. And then I went through all my material. I'm like, oh no,
I don't have anything. Yeah. Because even if a routine's not specifically about sex or something like that, you sort of go, I technically don't have to swear, but this well-placed fuck genuinely changes the punchline between whether or not I get zero laughter or an applause break, and I need that. And that sort of stuff it's so difficult because it's changing something that you've done every single night or something that you do every single weekend for years and years and years, and you've got to it's suddenly not second nature having to just change a punchline. And also, if it's a chain of gigs that you say never done before, then the first night you'll find out whether or not that change works is in front of them. At what is essentially an audition. It's horrible.
It's one of those. I've just collected all the ideas that I had. I was like, no, that's not strong enough. That's quite weak. That's quite everybody's sort of talked about that. And now I'm like, no, I need all of that, please. And and I'm just going to just sell it like it's the best thing they've ever heard. And we'll just see. But it's certainly scrambled my noggin for a bit. I'm rushing again, like you. I'm just rushing around again, and
do you
I hope it pays off. I'd rather that than not.
Yeah,
I think I'd rather that. I know when it gets quiet, then I think, oh no, that's it. I'm over. I'm done. My career's finished.
Oh man, me and my girlfriend are trying to force ourselves. Like next time, like January rolls around, to sort of try and remind ourselves, January's always rubbish. There's always no work. there's nothing, and we're
Yes.
always going to be fine. And we always complain in the autumn that we never get an evening in or anything like that. I need to try and remind myself of that, and I never can. I fall into this pit of despair every January and February, and I just go, well, that career was fun while it lasted, I guess, but nothing there. That was it. It's ridiculous. I've had that every single year for like 6 years now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. We all, and the thing is, you think you're the only one that's thinking it, and it's not only in our industry. It's I think because we're animals fundamentally, we're supposed to be hibernating. So we're all kind of, we tend to stay in a bit more because the weather's rubbish, it's cold. We kind of gather our things around us. But then we start thinking, oh, is this it then? Is this it forever?
Well, this is because my birthday's in the middle of January. And so I always had this with regards to like, oh, it's really tricky trying to get all my friends to come out. And the reality I hope is January, no one's got any money, no one's drinking in January, the weather's really miserable. But all I'm thinking of, my thought process every year is, they're probably really busy being on TV. They've probably all got all those TV shows that are being booked in January. And friends of mine I've got friends who are gardeners. They're not even looking to be on TV in the first place. And that's all that's genuinely what the first subconscious thought process is.
And that's it. And that's how I think. I think one of the things, and this has been said in here before, I think the pandemic really made me realise that we are fundamentally all the same. Doesn't matter where we are successfully or where we are in life. We are fundamentally the same. We're all having the same worries in different brackets. Like, you're thinking, we're thinking our careers are over. People are thinking that their social life is over and they're not popular, and it's all the same. We're all the same. And
I think that helped me through it. The pandemic, and not in a nasty way, not in like Ed Norton in Fight Club, where he goes to all those like cancer support groups and it makes him feel better because everyone's lives are so much worse. Not in that way, but just in the sense of like, it reassured me that like, okay, everyone is in exactly the same boat, and I would have panicked normally about like, if I wasn't, say, doing the Edinburgh Fringe, which then just didn't feel remotely important. But if I wasn't doing the Edinburgh Fringe, say, this year, I'd probably sit at home and just be looking up online at all times, being like, everyone is progressing their careers and making useful stuff out of it, and I'm sat at home doing nothing, and I'd really panic. And actually, that was kind of useful to know. In 2020, no one was able to do that, and that kind of helped me through, but not in a gleeful way, just in a all right. Everyone is being forced to plateau. That was despite it being overall a bad experience for everyone, was a really like pivotal moment in improving my mental health. I think genuinely that period, because it was like, oh, none of this matters. None of what I've been striving for the past few years matters, and that's kind of a good thing. I didn't mean it in a futile way, but it was just like, oh, you can relax a bit more. And I'm trying to get into that headspace ahead of the Edinburgh Fringe, because I think that's the time when career stuff gets most on top of you, I think. And I'm so looking forward to, on like a Friday afternoon or whatever, at like 5 p.m, just getting on a commuter train and just sitting amongst everyone else who is leaving Edinburgh for the day and just thinking, oh yeah, this is so unimportant in the wider scheme of things. Or just going to a different town where there's not posters of everyone you know on every wall. That's really handy as well. That's a really handy thing to do.
And there's always in the festival, there's always a couple of people that are the talk of the festival. And it's they're and it's not personal that they're not talking about you. It's just that's just happening to them, and there's that tendency, I think, for a lot of comedians to go, well, I'm failing. Well, you're not failing. Are people coming to your show? Yes. Will you get things from this festival? Yeah, of course you will. So,
Rich, I've lived with them. Do you know what it's like living with Phil Wang at the Edinburgh Fringe? Do you know what it's like as an experience? Last time we lived together in 2019, his run had sold out before we went up to Edinburgh. That was like...
It did. And then he did the big gigs in the big rooms as well.
Yeah. It's but those experiences, you sort of think, look, how many thousands and thousands of shows there are, what percentage of people are genuinely having a good time? If that's the criteria we base it on, then it's like, as much as I find it such a useful experience and it's a wonderful event, I've never enjoyed myself there, ever. Never.
No?
Never. No.
Because of the stress. Just because of the stress of it.
It's a stress. It's 100% the stress. It's like, I've always seen it as your A levels, but the entire country can look up your results online. Like that's what it, and I think I don't know. I think for the first couple of times I went up, like as a student or whatever, just watching shows or anything like that, I really sort of enjoyed that. Or just doing like the odd gig here and there was so enjoyable because there was no pressure and everything just felt bigger than you, and you sort of go, wow, this is something to really sort of strive for. And then I think the pressure around debutantes and stuff like that is so ridiculously sort of toxic, and I fully felt the pressure when I did my debut in like that would have been 2016, of just being of just knowing I had 3 reviewers in on the very, very first day of my run. Wow. And it was like, fortunately I managed to like fill it with friends. The review's really nice, and that had then helped me have a good run. But that is amongst the most pressure I'd ever felt doing comedy under any circumstances for what is ultimately meant to be a fun thing. And it made me really resent and have a real chip on my shoulder about people who went up in like the 90s when it was like 10 shows or whatever, or like one of the agents at Avalon was saying, I think he was talking about Chris Addison. He was like, well, when Chris Addison came up, he had like a vague idea for a show, and then about a week into the Fringe, decided he wanted to sort of do the show from behind a lectern. So we got like a lectern, and he sort of sourced that, and that just sort of retransformed the show. And by the end of the month, the show was just a completely different thing. He sort of wrote a lot of it sort of during the month, and I think he won the main award at the end of it. And you just sort of think that cannot happen now. That would never. You've got to go up with this finished product. And I know that like the first few days of a Fringe are meant to be like preview shows, but like that's now meant to be like a sneaky opportunity to be like, get your reviewers in then. Get your reviewers in the preview shows, then you get the early reviews, and you sort of go, it's ultimately such a terrifying experience. And I'm someone who's always taken like, even just like the slightest adjective or whatever in a review, really poured over it and analysed it, good or bad, to be like, what do they mean, but what do I need to change? All my opinions are based on basically other people's opinions. So if I had, if there was like this situation, let's say the Edinburgh Fringe that's coming up, if it was like a sold out show every day, audiences who were just incredibly nice, really, really enjoyed it, and even saying really nice things after the show, no reviews, but just all really, really nice audience members, and then halfway through the show, halfway through the run, it gets like a really like tepid, not even about like tepid 3 stars, it's like, bit disappointing really. That would immediately change my entire perception of the show based on that entire one thing, and I would then be like, oh, I was silly for thinking that was a good show because it's in print that it's disappointing. I would 100% put that on a pedestal above anyone else's opinion. And I think it probably comes from, it depends on the scale of the review, but I guess it's like my thinking and my reasoning was always like, if that was a broadsheet, more people will read that review than will ever see the show, and as a result, whether they like it or not, will form some sort of opinion based on that rather than my show, and that's something I have no control over, and I find that element really frustrating. And so that's 100% what gets in my head every year. It's purely reviews. It's nothing. It's never about audiences or anything like that at all. No. As much as they are like, they're really nice and they really cheer me up. That's never audiences are never the stress. It's always just the idea of a reviewer. I've built up in my head so much. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's like you'll do a show. The audience that were there had an incredible time. Like, they were like, "Oh, I really enjoyed that. That was exactly what I needed. I paid for a good show. I paid to have a laugh. I had what I paid for. I've left now. I'm on cloud 9. I'm gonna have the brilliant rest of my day. Is gonna be fantastic." And I love Glenn Moore. I think Glenn Moore's brilliant. What a brilliant comedian. But there'd be a reviewer in, and because they've reviewed 1,000 shows, it's their job. Yeah. And they'll go, Glenn is great, but the show needed bloody blah blah, or it needed this, or whatever they say, and that's that's how we're judged. And it really upsets me a bit that the show was great and the people that came to see it loved it, but because the reviewer went, it wasn't as good as the last one, or not as good as this, or whatever, that's it. You know, kind of go, it should be. They shouldn't have that much importance. No disrespect to anybody that's reviewing, any review. No, because they probably don't ask to have that much power. Do you know what I mean? They would probably, I'm sure so many of them would be mortified if they found out just how people had ended up in real emotional depth because of something they'd written like a really blasé way. 100%. But yeah, there have been entire shows that I've looked back on with nothing other than embarrassment and shame, purely because of like an absolutely fine 3-star review, but I was like, wow, yeah, I was silly for liking that, and I feel like I've conned the audience. It's such an unhealthy outlook. I'm hoping that like having been away from Edinburgh for like 2 years has made me sort of realize, because also I think the I'd done 4 shows in a row. And so to have done one in 2016, and then you sort of go, right, that went well, so pressure's on to do an even better show. And then 2017, I don't think went as well as 2016. So then it was like, well, pressure's on to do better than that. Like, regardless of whether or not it's good or bad, it's always like the pressure's on to me. And then like 2018 was probably the best it's gone. And so it was like, well, now there's pressure to better that. And it was like, well, no, why can't I just rest on that for a while? And then so year on year, it just kept on getting more and more pressure. And I'm hoping this year, with the Edinburgh Fringe very, very fast approaching, that it'll be like, I think I'll probably go into it with a bit more of a zen attitude and not. And also, I guess you reach a stage where you just sort of go, I'm not as reliant on reviewers anymore, or you just think, like, really, how much would one change? How much would one reviewer fully change my life and career now? I think it can potentially, like, the first time a reviewer's seen you, and if out of nowhere the Times saw you and gave you 5 stars, you sort of go, oh, that's a game changer. But generally, it doesn't matter. Is what I'm going to try and tell myself every day in August. I'm hoping.
The thing is, you're already...
I'm so aware of how dumb it is. I'm so aware of what a dumb viewpoint that is. But I can't shake it because it's all I've ever known.
It's the nature of the beast, mate. It's the nature of what we do, especially in that environment. The thing is, you're already doing the things that you would have gotten from... You've already done the things that you got from Edinburgh last time. So you're doing the things. You know...
That's it. I don't know what I'm... Do you know what it was? So this is I won't say who it was. So before my current agent, I had the first agent I had was brilliant, but quite live, mostly sort of like live based. And I remember a few promoters saying to me like, "Oh, your agent is brilliant. You'll do really, really well on the circuit." Just to let you know, traditionally with this agent, they haven't been able to get anyone any radio stuff, TV stuff, podcast stuff, anything. Just be aware of that. And it was like, okay, well, fine. But I still trust them. I know, that's not what it's all about for me and, that sort of thing. And then I was in a double act. And this is at the Fringe. This is like, we went up our first year to the Fringe, like 2013, with no PR, no agent, nothing. And it's sort of like the show word of mouth wise went really well. So the second time we went with like promoters and PR and an agent and stuff like that. And, I remember this agent saying before the Fringe, "Oh, we've got quite a few. I've managed to get quite a few important TV people coming in to see you guys." And I was just thinking, "Oh my god, that is incredible! I can't wait for this." Yeah. And I remember thinking, "Well, this isn't what I heard. This is amazing, And it got to like a few weeks into the Fringe, and I was like, "So how have they come? What did they think?" And she said, yeah, bad news on that front. They all basically, I think they read that 3-star review you guys got, and they basically just they all rang up and cancelled after that. No. And what it became quite apparent was these people were never booked in to see, but like they were never coming in the first place. But I think it was like a way of sort of covering tracks and then putting the blame on us and being sort of like, look, you guys didn't get the good reviews, so what can I do? That 100% is like the moment it sort of clicked in my head of like, fuck, if 3 stars is like worse than killing someone. Your name is mud in the first, and so obviously, even though in retrospect, knowing fully well that is where this all comes from for me, and I know it's all complete nonsense, I still can't shake that subconscious element. So when it came round to sort of doing debut solo show and stuff, where it was like, right, really got to try and launch your career here, the idea of like 3 or lower just scared me so much. And I still feel that sense now. If I get like, if someone messages me to say like, oh, there's a review of you out now, I'll sort of Google it and open it. And then it's only when you sort of see, if I see the star rating and it's like 4, it's like, oh my God, okay, phew. Okay, it's not like a sense of joy. It's just a sense of, right, we survived that. We survived that one. Okay, great, phew. And it's like, as a result, it's something that so gets in my head and absolutely terrifies me. And I don't know why, because obviously it clearly never has a major effect. I've never had anyone. I've had like important people come and see a show based on like a good review. I've never ever known anyone to like cancel a show or anything like that because like and go, I'm not seeing that show because I saw I had a tepid review. I've never seen it work that way. But in my head, I'm like, guess that's the way the industry works because of an offhand comment someone made in 2014 to cover their ass.
But you've achieved things now. You were nominated, right?
Yeah,
for the
and that was great. That was really nice. And
surely that should go against now. That should cancel out. It should.
And do you know what? That was really nice because that show in 2018 had like all the reviews were really nice. but it wasn't getting like a massive amount of reviews. All the reviews were nice, but they were from like sort of smaller publications and stuff like that. And then the nomination came along, and I don't think many like big reviewers come to see it, because by this point it was like my third show. I think people thought I had a good gauge of sort of where I was at. And then so when I was nominated, what happened when I was standing at the back of the Tron, which is the room I was in, and so there's no like backstage area, you just have to stand and just watch the audience come into your room. And there I saw like the reviewers for like The Guardian, The Times, The Sunday Times, Chortle, Beyond the Joke, all come in one group and just sit together. And I think ordinarily that would have absolutely terrified me, but I think in that moment I was like, nothing can... I'd literally been nominated like an hour previously. It was like nothing can shake that for me at all. Like this is going to be fine, and that filled me with so much confidence going up. And then like the first couple of reviews of them came out the next day, and there were like 4s, and it was like, oh, this is this, and I just didn't feel as phased, you know, because I was like, oh, I feel finally like beyond that. And then like I think maybe a couple of days later, one of those people came out, and it was like a 3, and I just for the first time just didn't care. And I was like, it's a bit disappointing, but it was like, oh, phew, okay, fine. But then it completely reset the following year. 2019 went up to the Fringe, absolutely terrified. Had like a student reviewer in the first day, and I knew it was like, this is being posted on like some minuscule blog that no one would ever come across, but I was still terrified knowing someone was in. And I just couldn't shake that. And again, like, I think it's so dumb, but I think doing a show the year after being nominated and not getting nominated for like the follow-up then made me at some points think, God, I wish I hadn't been nominated originally, because this feels like such a step back. This feels humiliating. That like, I didn't feel humiliated, but I was like, everyone must think this is humiliating for me.
Yes.
And it was, again, such a dumb thought process. No one would care. No one would care. I've known people who've been nominated and not been nominated the following year or whatever. I don't care. Like, that's not my thought process at all. But to then subsequently take the show on tour, I felt really embarrassed, and I felt really guilty doing that show every night, because I'd be sort of waiting in the wings and being like, I'm about to con a really nice audience who have maybe arranged for babysitters and have had a nice night. Maybe this is the first night out in ages, and people have spent a lot of money on these tickets and stuff. You know, it's just, I thought, and I'm giving them an absolute heap of shit because this show is a backward step from last year. Even though it was like, wow, I know the show was better than the previous year, and I was so proud of it going up. But like that, in the space of like an hour, my attitude towards it had changed to one of complete like, just shame, and just like I feel really silly for having written a show in the first place. This was a bad idea. Mate. I'm hoping that I never have that thought process again. Like, I'm going out to the Fringe this time with like, this is my best show, without doubt, by quite some distance. I'm really happy with it. I'm really proud of it. And I'm happy for anyone in the world to see it. And I will go into it with the same level of pride every day. And that's how it sort of should be. And I'm really hoping I can keep that mindset up.
That's exactly how it should be.
I'm hoping.
We've not been for a couple of years. Well, I went up for a week last year, and it was just, we were just kind of.
You went to the good one, the best Fringe ever.
Best Fringe ever. It was back to how it was in the 90s, where you could just rock up, do what you got to do. Although I was reviewed, and they said, this is a mishmash of old material and new, and I'm like, yeah, I've been trapped in my flat.
What the fuck do you think I've been doing? Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
So that also terrifies me. When you got a reviewer who seem to know your entire back catalogue. And they got some old stuff in there, and you go, I don't even fucking remember what was in my show last year. I don't like. No. If you could tell me what jokes I did last year, that would be really handy, because I can't remember.
So you were like that? Are you like that anyway? Before you got into comedy, are you quite sort of? Do you overthink things anyway?
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I'm trying to think in what sort of capacity, but like, I don't know. I think like something I was really nervous about, for instance, when I was about 11 years old, was we had a school trip to a place in Wales, in like the Brecon Beacons, for like a weekend in year 7. Yeah. And there was like some school talent show on the final night, and I did a really mean impression of what I basically did impressions that night. And I did a really mean impression of one of the teachers who wasn't there. And it went down really well with the kids, but I just didn't, in the moment I was like, this feels amazing. And I didn't stop to think, there are teachers watching this who are going to probably tell me off. And I remember that there was like that one of the teachers just stood out. So one of my school friends told me as we were sort of going to bed, I was absolutely dying for a piss, and he said, one of the teachers is just waiting outside the bathrooms, like, for you, so they can have a word with you. What? And so I just held in fucking gallons of piss all night because I was so terrified, because I was like, I can't talk to them. And then the next morning, sure enough, she called me over and she was like, what was that about? And I was like, no, that wasn't an impression of that teacher. No, I was doing an impression of him. I just mentioned some random celebrity. And she was like, oh, right, okay, fine. And I felt okay about it and relaxed. But on like the school coach home, they just showed us some random tape of the same school trip that some other school kids had been on in previous years. And they showed like some kids in the year above us or whatever. They showed their school talent show. And I was thinking, oh, fuck, did they film last night? Because if so, that's going to be shown to that teacher at some point. And I would go through for about what would have been about 5 or 6 years of school, once every 3 weeks, would just sit in silence for like 2 hours in my room, just thinking, my life's going to be over the second that thing comes out. I'm going to get expelled. And I was so scared. And it was because I had no control over that. I mean, I had control over doing that, but and looking back, it was like, oh, I just gave a teacher a dumb voice and just did an impression of stuff they said. It wasn't even that bad. But as a kid, you think, oh, that's the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And so I was really, really nervous all the time about it. And I think it was because as well, occasionally in lessons with that teacher, some of my school friends would occasionally like loudly make reference to it in really cryptic ways around the teacher, and it was like he's eventually gonna snap and just go, so what's this about? It was just not being in control of that thing, but it's gonna absolutely ruin your life. I wonder if that has had an effect on the current mindset of stuff like reviews, because you go, I've done my bit, say I've performed my show to the best of my abilities, I've performed it in front of an audience who enjoyed it, and I'm really proud of the construction of it. But now I've got to wait to hear whether or not a reviewer understood it perfectly, didn't like mishear certain sentences or whatever, and go, yeah, that just didn't sound like a joke or whatever. Like that then terrifies me to go, right, I'm now putting this in the hands of someone who I have no control over. That's what always sort of scares me. So I probably wasn't like that before the age of about 11, and that happened. And then I think I was really overcautious for a lot of like my teenage years and stuff like that, and I'd almost like this sounds ridiculous, but I think I'd almost like practice conversation. If I was going to like a party, I'd practice stuff in my head that might come up as a conversational topic and stuff like that, and be like, what would I say in that situation? And just to make sure that you're as in control of the situation as possible. And very occasionally, in some like Slumdog Millionaire-esque way, someone would say the exact thing that I had like the perfect answer. So you'd occasionally come up with like an amazing joke that looked like it was like on the spot. And in reality, you don't want to tell people, no, that's I actually got that joke from a conversation I had in my head 3 weeks ago about this bowling party. Really
like me,
stuff.
I really do overthink stuff. And I take it to, and it isn't just like, oh, well, I've done that now. All right, I'm sure it'll be fine, but it might be a bit shit for a bit. But I'm always like, that's it now, it's done. I always catastrophize. It's always, that's it. Everyone's going to hate me. This is the end. I'm done. And you're like, no, you just did it. I mean,
yeah, it's so ridiculous, and I really like whenever someone who I know, like, or respect, or anything like that has messaged me and been like, sorry, I said something to you last week, and it's really been bothering me that maybe you thought I meant this. And I've in those occasions, I always ring the person back, and I'm like, thank you so much. That is not what I thought at all. You're all good, but thank you for making me realize it's not just me who thinks in this way. I didn't even know what conversation you're talking about. Of course, that was, that makes me feel really nice and sort of relaxed about those sort of situations, knowing that, like, of course no one cares,
It's like when you think back, like we all do it when you go, oh, I remember that thing that I did in 1999 or whatever. And this stuff I did like way back when I was a kid. I remember being at school. This popped into my head yesterday. So we had an open evening in the school, and parents that were looking to bring their kids to the secondary school. They were coming around. They were showing you all the good bits of the school. We had a few of our students in, like, to do some work whilst the parents came around and had a look and see what if they wanted to bring their children to that school. And I had my school uniform, but I had these brand new shoes that I really wanted to wear. Now, we had to wear black shoes, but I really liked these new shoes, and they were brown. And I had those on, and I remember just sitting in the classroom, and the teacher came through, and he went, "Wilson, what have you done? You've got brown shoes on." I'm like, yeah, but they're new. He went, "This is to show the school, so that the school is the best school in the area, and you wearing those shoes just shows a lack of discipline." I said, "Just never know." And this was in 1987. And I was like, oh, God, I remember that. I bet he thinks I'm an idiot. I'm like, he doesn't know it's me. I'm a 50-year-old man now. This is if even he's not going to, but even if he was ever to think about it, he's not going to go, there was a little boy with brown shoes on. He's not going to think, oh, yeah, he's a 50-year-old man now. He does stand-up comedy. I'm not that person. Why am I worried?
But do you still think about it? Does it still pop into your head as like, fuck, I made a mistake there?
Yeah. That's all the time. Like, oh, God, that was a ridiculous thing. Like when I used to work at Curry's after I left school. And the guy, I've mentioned this on here before because it bothers me still. The manager, when he took me on, he knew I wasn't great at the job, but he took a chance. He took me on. And then he gave me his commission. He said, "Look, you can have my first couple of months commission just to get you in the door because the money's not great."
Wow. And
I ended up I abandoned the job. I couldn't do it. I was so ungrateful because I was a kid. And even now I'm like, oh, I want to find him and I want to tell him that I realise now what he did for me. Yeah, he's not thinking that. He's thinking there's a 16-year-old kid that took the piss.
Yeah, and it was 2 months out of his whole life. And, even if he was pissed off, it's probably fine. Like,
he doesn't remember me.
Yeah, but I kind of want to, I don't know about you, but I'm just like, I need to know. I need to know. I need to know they're okay. Like, this isn't so much about me anymore. I need to know that they're fine. I had this is so weird. This radio station I worked at when I used to live in Sheffield, one of the presenters, he'd sent like a demo tape to a big station. They'd been like, yeah, we'd love for you to present on one of our shows. And like that day he like slept in or something stupid like that. And then was so anxious, didn't turn up to like the second show either. And was really, really nervous about it. And he said, the boss has emailed me and I can tell it's not going to be a nice email. Can you read it for me? And I read it and it was, this guy's career was over, Yeah. And I just had this email in front of me and he said, do you know what? Don't tell me what it says. I don't want to know. And he just carried on with his regular job, didn't think about this big radio station ever again. But I was like, how do you not want to know what's in that email? If I heard someone's angry at me, I need to know. Like I need to know, and I need to know that they're not still angry. This always used to bother me in films and TV shows and stuff like that. If I saw something dreadful happen to like a character, it was fine if I saw like that through to the end. You sort of go, this character's really miserable, and then at the end they die. That's sad. Okay. It would bother me more if there was a character you saw, like some background character, something dreadful happens to them, and then you never see them again because I'm like, are they all right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like it was really weird. I like. For some reason, when I was like a teenager, I saw Final Destination 2, which is just the dumbest horror film. And you see all these characters, dreadful things happen to them, but you see them from the beginning of their lives to the end of their lives. Not the beginning of their lives, but you see them from like the beginning of the film to the end of their lives, and you know how that's sort of resolved. And you don't care about any of them. They die in horrific circumstances, but you're like, these are such poorly written characters, I don't care. Then the film ends with a barbecue where a barbecue explodes. It kills like a kid, and he gets killed in front of his mum, and the mum screams, and that's meant to be the funny ending to the film. But I remember just being really bothered as a teenager, being like, what? That was her only kid. Why you can't end a film like that? That's horrible. I need to know that she's like, in time, went through a grieving process, and they maybe have another kid who we just didn't see on the screen, and so they've at least got some level of continuity in their family. It just, for some reason, I just needed to know. I needed to know. So that's why, like, if I've ever known anyone's like pissed off at me or something like that, I'll happily lose all dignity in myself and just be like, I'm really sorry. I really need to know that you're not still annoyed at me. Or it's utterly pathetic, but I'm just like, I need it for my own sake.
I think it gets easier as you get older, because I was the same. It used to keep me up at night. I had this mad need to be liked by everybody, and you just can't. You're gonna rub up the wrong way against people. Things are gonna happen. You're gonna fall out with people, and it's not nice. You're not, you don't want to do that, but it happens. It's just part of life. But now I'm at a point where there's a couple of people that I just know now. I'm like, look, we're never gonna make it, right? For my part, I'm sorry that we've fallen out. I didn't want it to be like that. But for some reason they're like, no, you're done. And you're like, yeah, but we were both to blame for this. But I will never get what I need from that. So I've got to let it go and go, all right, fine. I've apologized. I've said sorry.
Yeah.
If you want to carry it on, fine. But I've done my bit. And it's difficult. Now and again, I'll go, I should ring him. But there's no point.
I've never had the guts to be the person who like decides that. I've never been the person who's been like, right, we're through. I'm never talking to you again. I've never. Because if I said to someone, do you know what? I never want to see you again. I never want to talk to you again. If they then turned around to me and said, well, I never want to see you again, I'd be like, no shit, sorry. I didn't mean, because I'm like, well, they're in charge now. They're in charge of the conversation. I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I've never been able to like do the whole silent treatment thing with someone I'm annoyed at. I just can't, because or occasionally I'll like not blank someone, but if I was like annoyed at a housemate, I'd just be a bit off with them, just a bit quiet with them, and they'd be like, you're right, and I'd be like, yeah, and then they'd be like, fuck you, man, and I'd be like, no shit, no, sorry, take me back as a friend, please. It's pathetic. I genuinely don't see a situation in which I'm going to get better at that. Ever.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm the same. There's a couple of people that too many things have been done where you kind of go, listen, this is fucked. I deserve better than that.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna tolerate that. I was talking to someone the other day and they went, I bet if they messaged you and said, can we talk, you'd bloody talk to them. Yeah, bloody would, wouldn't I?
Yeah,
I would.
Because don't you want everything to be better with everyone? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I
imagine for some people there's a certain satisfaction in being like, oh yeah, I cut that person out of my life completely. I'm sure there's a satisfaction there, but at the same time, I'm like, do you just want everyone to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can't
but
be
yeah,
all
I
just get along.
don't know if it even comes from a need to be liked as such. I think for me, it just comes from a need to not be in trouble.
Yes,
I'm really scared of being in trouble.
I can't make phone calls.
As an adult, it doesn't come up. I'm a self-employed individual who, like, if I got like in trouble with a comedy promoter, like I can't think of any. Even like the biggest comedy club chain, if they just suddenly turn around to me and went, we really didn't like your set the other night, we don't want you to ever come back. Obviously, I'd be absolutely gutted. But I cannot think of a chain where that would be career ruining for me, where you go, I don't know how I'm going to... I'm at that club there's no place I perform at every single week or every single month. There's no place there's no one place I'm really rely on. And so, I'm just absolutely terrified of being in trouble. I think I probably chose the wrong jobs for it. As someone who is scared of being in trouble, like, because obviously, like, in comedy, you're meant to say stuff. I'm not one of those people who subscribes to the notion that sort of like we're meant to push buttons and be the most outrageous. We're meant to say the most. I don't mean that. I don't mean that at all. But like, the whole point of comedy is a punchline comes from surprise. If someone predicts a punchline, they don't laugh at it. It comes from surprise. So sometimes you say stuff that's really disgusting or really. And obviously, I'm not someone who's in any way a controversial comedian, but occasionally you have to say something that's really gross or really shocking or whatever like that. But also, you never know what's gonna. You never know what's gonna push someone's buttons, and And I had I was doing a preview a couple of months ago, and someone came up to me and said that this was the first. They used to come to this club all the time with their sibling, and this is the first time they'd come since their sibling took their own life. And I was like, I'm really sorry to hear that. And congratulations on coming back today and stuff like that. And they said they sort of enjoyed the comedy night. And they said, she said, I felt a bit, she said, it's not a criticism at all, but I felt a bit like tense, I guess, when you made that one joke. And I thought, in my set, there is a joke it's about Hitler's suicide, but it's about suicide nonetheless. And I suddenly thought, oh shit, it's about that. And she mentioned a joke I'd done about a particular object, and that particular object was what her sister had used to take her own life. And I just thought, oh my God, it's such a minuscule object. I would never, you never know with these. I had a joke about a speedboat in a show I did a couple of years ago, and someone came up to me afterwards and went, my best friend was killed by a speedboat. And it was like, I'm really sorry. It was just a noun.
Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what this audience member was saying at all. She wasn't being like, you shouldn't do that joke. She was like, what she was saying was, it's really weird, the thought process I had of, oh my God, that I can't believe that's been brought up. It was comedy night and stuff like that. But we had a really nice talk and stuff like that. And she'd sort of really enjoyed herself at the night. But But in that regard, if you're scared of being in trouble, then comedy is the wrong career for that, because you never know what you're going to say that could upset someone in that particular moment, and similarly, the fact that I used to work as like a newsreader was a terrifying job to have, because if you breach Ofcom's broadcasting guidelines severely enough, you can go to jail. If you say the wrong stuff about someone on air or anything like that, you can accidentally, defame someone, commit contempt of court, and all this sort of stuff, just purely from just saying
words.
There was a story I covered years and years and years ago, where it was something that a domestic violence charity were doing, and I interviewed a woman who'd been a victim of domestic violence, and we did this big story and feature on her, and her family really got behind this story we were doing. And I gave it to the Breakfast newsreader. This was at a radio station I worked at like 10 years ago. Gave it to the Breakfast newsreader. She changed some of the language herself just to make it fit her vocal style. But in doing so, said that this woman had been abused by her partner. And I got a phone call the next day from the family saying, why did you say on the news, her partner's really upset that you said he domestically abused her? The story was about her brother domestically abusing her. And what happened is the Breakfast newsreader just made that obvious assumption of domestic violence, where it's going to be about the husband.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely, I felt awful for that sort of mistake and really apologized to the guy. It was the other newsreader who'd made the mistake, but I just thought one of us here at this radio station is going to really, really be in deep, like legal, serious trouble as a result of this. And it was just through just the slightest misstep of just saying a sentence. I spoke to the family, went around to visit them and stuff like that, and we sort of papered it over, and I was really scared, but they were really understanding about it and reasonable about it. But yeah, in every occupation I've ever had, there's always been some level of stakes where you sort of go, if I say the wrong thing or upset someone, then this is all over. This is all fully over. In a way that I've always envied any friend of mine who works in an office where they don't need to say a single word. I'm like, that sounds brilliant. That sounds so good.
It's so interesting.
Any friends of mine who are like actuaries or anything like that, I'm like, yeah, I'd love that. If I could do maths, man, I'd love that.
Never. It's so interesting you bring that up. I said this a little while ago. I said, I'm petrified of being in trouble. This is why I can't make phone calls. This is why I can't get back to people, because I'm like, I should have done that. They're going to be angry. They're going to be annoyed. I'm like, again, I'm a 50-year-old man. Yeah. And in any other situation, I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, whatever, fine. But when it comes to being in trouble, it's like, I can't, if I have to ring a promoter and go, mate, listen, I'm really sorry, I can't do that gig.
Oh my God.
Horrified.
I can't do it. I will bend over backwards to the point I'm like, I will pay you the gig fee. And I'll sort you an act now, and I'll make sure I'll get Michael McIntyre to replace. I'll get a much better actor to replace me. I will bend over backwards for something, and then every day I get emails from promoters being like, "Hey, we've had a dropout with half an hour to spare. Can anyone make it to Northampton?" And I sort of go, "Oh, this shit happens all the time," and people are obviously just bringing up promoters being like, "Oh, I'm not coming tonight." And then that's it. And then getting themselves rebooked. And I think the more you apologise, the more people not take advantage. I think they subconsciously take advantage of that, because the more you're like really like clasping your hands and being like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I think part of them, something switches people's brains if they go, "This person must have fucked up. Why are they looking so worried? They must have done something really bad." Whereas if you literally rang a promoter and said, "I'm not coming tonight, fuck you," they'd be like, "Okay, great. Can you do next week? Can you do?" So I was trying to force myself to, like, if I had to drop out of a gig, just be a bit more non-committal about it and be sort of like, really sorry about that. Not going to be able to make it work. Here's a list of people who I think will probably be available and good, and I'd love to do it next month if you'll have me. But because also, if someone's late replying to you to an email, Rich, do you get really angry?
No,
exactly. No. I don't know anyone who does. I don't know anyone who sits snarling at Gmail every day, furious every time a message comes up, because people have got other shit going on in their lives. But in my head, I've still got like this idea of like, that everyone's a teacher, and that everyone is like, all my teachers at school I found absolutely terrifying, because they put on this demeanor of being terrifying teachers, which is I just can't get my head around that thought process. I understand that someone wouldn't necessarily want to like try and be like the cool teacher or anything like that. But I had teachers whose entire demeanor, which you'd see them sort of laughing with one of their colleagues. And if you needed to get their attention, you sort of stand near them. They're having a real laugh and joke with one of the other teachers. And as soon as they turn to you, their face just turns to a snarl, and it's like, "What is it, you wicked boy?" And you sort of go, "What the fuck are you doing? Who talks like that?" No, who naturally speaks like that? Why do you hate children so much? So why are you at this school?
Yeah,
it's so weird. And so as a result, in my head, I'm like, well, that's what all grown-ups are. All grown-ups are like that.
Oh man, I can't even remember his name. He was the French teacher. And
imagine if I just answered that for you. If I went, yeah, it was Mr. Stanmore.
Imagine. It was something like that, actually. And he looked like a vampire. He was always hunched over. He always wore the same clothes. He was quite a sort of hunched over, just a very creepy looking dude. And I'm sure he was probably a beautiful man, grandkids, wonderful human being. But he used to sit in the lab, and he'd sit up on his thing, and you'd have the headphones on, and you're doing your French thing, and then you knew when he was listening to you, because you'd hear the click, and then you just see him glaring at you with his vampire eyes, and it used to horrify me. And then he'd come over, and then he'd come through the headphones. He's like, "No, that's wrong. Do it again. This." And to the point, that's the class I used to bunk off the most. I just couldn't face it. I just have nightmares about him. I couldn't go.
I have nightmares about my DT teachers. I haven't done DT since I was 16. Like, it's so dumb. And I didn't even want to do DT. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm so scared of these people who are furious that I'm not as passionate about DT as they've decided I should be. And little do they know, I am not ever, under any circumstances, going to go into any profession that would require me to have a good understanding of systems and control or resistant materials. But it's so dumb. I hope teachers aren't like that now. I can't imagine they are. But they have to be. But there must be people I went to school with who have gone on to become teachers, and when they're 60 will be sort of calling children wicked and insolent and stuff like that.
I think it was just different back then. I think, especially even when I was a kid, I remember one of my teachers, Mrs. Pauls, and this was in the junior school, and it was a summer, and she came in, she went, "Oh, I like it when the little boys have got their shorts on, because when they're naughty, I can smack their legs." You know, and it's horrifying.
You sort of go, well, that person's really ill, aren't they? They're really unwell.
Yeah.
If that is your dream, you like better access to a kid's legs to hit them, is crazy. The first time I ever got really, really yelled at was in I must have been about 6, maybe 5. And it was at infant school, and we had to colour stuff in. I didn't know I was colourblind at the time, and I drew the sky as like purple, and a tree as like the grass was all brown and stuff like that. And I drew a person as what I thought was like pink, but it was purple, or And she just like screamed at me, and in my head I'm like, have I altered that memory in my head and changed it? But like, no, looking back, I remember it so vividly. And she was like screaming at me, furious at what a silly child to have drawn the sky as purple, and made me sort of show it in front of a class and stuff like that. And then, and looking back, I'm like, what was the thought process there? Like, what was her thought? Like, some serious shit must have gone down in her personal life to take that out on a child, And again, wouldn't, if you reminded her of that now, she probably wouldn't. I mean, fortunately, I think she's dead now, but like, that would not have played an effect on their life at all.
No,
the people who are nastiest and most evil do that stuff all the time. So that's why it's all the more sort of surprising. I think I'm somebody who's not very. I don't think I've ever taken out anger on anyone, and I think I like to think I haven't, but I think I'm so slow to anger that if we see it on like a 1 to 10 scale, that it would take me months and months and months to get to like 10. But as a result, it then takes me months and months and months to cool down. And when and it will be on the back of my mind all the time that I was like, I'm still pissed off about that person who cut me off in traffic. That was the moment that sent me to a 10, and I'm going to be a 10 every time I get in the car for the next month, And I remember dating a girl from Spain about 9 years ago or so. And what happened was she'd go to 10 in a split second. And as a result, she'd go back down to 0 again within a split second. So everyone's got their own scales of anger. So what happened is we'd walk out in traffic, a car wouldn't sort of like screech to a halt. She would like smack the bonnet of the car, scream at the driver or whatever. we'd go into like WH Smith's or whatever, and I'd sort of go, what was that all about? And she'd go, what? And I'd go, the car thing. And she'd go, what car? Oh, that. Oh, yeah. And she'd just forgotten it. And it was like, if someone yelled at me like that, I would remember that for the rest of my life. I remember every single time in my life I've been told off. It's been about 20 times. I remember all of them. It's like, it's so mad.
I have an aversion to men with moustaches because when I was 6,
Is that why you grew one as part of a beard? To be like,
I think I was trying to counteract the feelings because I worked at this.
It's Batman dressing up as a bat.
And I was working on this stall, and this guy had this. I don't know. I can't remember what we were selling. It might have been just secondhand stuff. And I was only 6, and I just remember for some reason I just ended up going to sleep. I was part of the Cubs, and we were supposed to be helping, but I was 6, so I just ended up curling up in a ball and falling asleep. And I remember being woken up, and this guy was standing over me, screaming at me, just going, "You're useless. You are useless. Stand up, stand up. You're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to be helping me." And then the other kid that I was with, Simon, he got all these pop cans of pop and all this other stuff. And the guy just hated me. And I'm like, and I just had to, every time I see someone with a moustache, I'm like, oh, that's that fella.
It's that guy.
Yeah. And I was 6. 44 years ago. He's probably dead. Ridiculous.
So, like, when Michael Owen grew a big handlebar moustache for Movember, were you like, oh, fuck, he's back?
Kick the television in.
Anytime anyone has a moustache. Poirot, you're terrified of Poirot.
There's just that initial kind of, oh, that dickhead from when I was 6. Yeah. But I do, yes. I'm really chilled out. But what happens is things build up, and then out of the blue, I'll be like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then I'll start having a go at somebody, and then they'll be like, oh, where's this coming from? I'm like, ah, and then I have to walk away. And then
you have to be like, oh, because 20% of it was that shopkeeper from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
5% of it was the person who nearly drove into your car last week. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that, you know what? You're right. I didn't do the thing that you asked me to do. And I'm sorry. It all built up. Instead of me saying, like, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I should have done that thing. Like, why are you always getting at me? And just, yeah. Doesn't that very often, but when it does, it's not very nice. And
it's explosive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on it though.
I just don't have the guts to confront anyone. I would rather bend over backwards and apologize. Like if there's anyone, like I've lived with people before who are really quick to temper, and they're if they get really, really angry, and even if I know they're fully in the wrong about something, I would rather buy them a crate of beers and apologize to them, even if they are fully in the wrong, just to be like, I know I won't be angry for the rest of the day. I'll be angry for the next hour, but I'll be fine in an hour's time. They're going to be angry for weeks. So it's best to just pretend to apologize, even though I know in my head that they're in the wrong, and just go, because that way everyone's happier. My therapist told me that's a very bad idea. But because I've been doing it for years and I think it works. It works. I'm not on bad terms with anyone.
Because then what will happen is you'll go, yeah, but you're just saying that. I know I'm wrong. And
that's annoying because you go, what do you want then?
I don't know. It's not necessarily bad terms. But yeah, there's a couple of people that it's bad terms, but that's because relationship went south, and that just happens.
But I mean, relationships is a separate thing. I think there are friends from school and uni and personal life and stuff who I could probably get in touch with now, and they'd probably be a bit surprised. But I'm sure we'd have a conversation. But yeah, there's certain people there's people if we dated for like 6 months 10 years ago, if I rang them up out the blue, they'd be like, what disease are you ringing up to tell me that you have? Like, what could you possibly be calling me for? I'm not sure I see that as bad terms. I just see that as just we're on no terms.
Yeah.
But even then, I always worried that I've only ever been out with someone who I truly thought was genuinely a nasty individual, like really genuinely unpleasant person. And I was really, really scared of them. Really, really, really scared of them. And when we broke up, I really wanted to have the guts to just sort of be like, I hate you. and these are all the things you do wrong. And I think you're a terrible person. But in my head, I was even though they worked in insurance or something like that. And at the time I was probably like semi-professional comedian. In my head, I was like, I'm so certain comedy is going to go wrong for me somewhere. I will end up just like temping again, just doing any temp job I can. One day I will end up working for her, and I will have to end up in job interview room, and she will be interviewing me, and I will have to apologize for anything bad I said. So instead we just broke up, and I did, was just like, I guess it just didn't work out between us. But in reality, I was like, thinking you were the worst person I've ever met. But I was too terrified to tell her that because I thought there'll be some situation in which I'm working for her in the future, 100%.
It'll be somebody else that will say it to her. It's not your place. You're not that kind of person. So it will be someone else. If that's what they're like, down the line, there will be someone that will go, do you know what?
Yeah.
And that's what you have to... Because the other thing as well is that confrontation upsets you. It upsets me. It happens, but very rarely. But when it does, it just ruins my day. So I don't like it. I don't want to do that. Some people can cope with it, like we already said. But having known someone very similar, I'm not in a position to say, like, do you know what? The way you treat everybody, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, do you know what? You're going to do it again. So this is, some people you can say it to. Some people you're just better off just walking off and going.
I think I'm terrified of the counterpoint. I've never had arguments because I always sort of think, well, if I've got a problem with someone, then the way I see it as the conversation will go, the way I want the conversation to go is I say, look, here is my problem. I didn't like some such a thing you did or said. And the aim is that they will go, I'm really sorry about that, and then you carry on with your lives. But obviously that's not how arguments work. So what happens is I'll say something, I'll put forward what I think is a really cogent point, and they'll go, yeah, but it's only like that time you did such a thing. And I go, oh, fuck, yeah, okay. I wasn't expecting a counterpoint. So now I've got to... I spent ages constructing this first line of argument, and now I've got to come up with a second line on the fly.
Yeah.
So I've never won an argument ever, because I've only ever had about 3, and I've lost them all. Because what's happened is I've said, I've got a problem with the way you did such a thing, and they've said, well, maybe you shouldn't do such a thing, and I've gone, yeah, sorry, forget I said it. Please, can we just forget this conversation took place? I hate the atmosphere I've created. I preferred it a few seconds ago, and we were both happy, ignorant and happy, and I want it to be like that again.
And I, for one, I want you to stay as you are, Glenn, because I think you're great, and I've
that's very
really
kind of you to
enjoyed
say,
talking
Rich.
to you today.
I think my girlfriend has sort of said to me, like, please, we'll do it in the calmest way, but if you've ever got any issue with me, please just sit me down. I'll know that it's a big conversation, and we'll just talk about it in the most gentlest terms possible, because she knows that I am absolutely incapable of confrontation and stuff like that. So she's very understanding about it. And so we'll talk about it in like the most gentle terms, which sounds absolutely pathetic on my part, but it's like, it's either that or I won't say anything at all. So it's the only way I can do it.
I think that's it. It's like with my partner. Again, we had a conversation the other day, and then I just said, look, I just feel like you've got a lot on. I've got a lot on, and I don't want to burden you with what I'm worrying about. And she's like, but then we'll never sort anything out. So she said, just tell me. So I sent her a big list on WhatsApp of what I was worrying about. She went, and now you feel better. I went, I do actually. So
now you've got to go through the whole list. That's terrifying. That's so scary.
I think I'm just going to put it under the whole thing of baggage.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. But Glenn, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for talking.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where you're on in Edinburgh? Where are you in Edinburgh?
I'm on in Pleasance Courtyard at the Cabaret Bar at 4 p.m. Well, 4:05 every day, every single day of the Fringe, and then nationwide tour starts in September, like a week after the Fringe. So all the tickets for all of those collectively are on glenmorecomedy.com. But I'm looking forward to the Fringe. It'd be nice to see you up there, man.
Oh, and you, mate. I'm going to come and see you because all my stuff's later on in the evening. So I'll come and see you. I love your work. Cabaret Room's a great room as well. Fantastic.
Oh,
room.
yeah. I did my last show there in 2019, and honestly, it just felt great. It felt like it feels nice to be in I'd never been in like a purpose-built venue before. You do get so used in Edinburgh to perform, even like the biggest rooms you see people performing, you peel back a black curtain and you go, there's a basketball. Oh, we're in a basketball court. Oh, okay, right. And so it feels so nice to have a year where you go, oh my God, this would function as a venue the rest of the year. And then, cause I'm like, the next year will be on to, the aim is basketball court. That's the aim. I want to
I look forward to helping you put the black cloth up to cover it all up.
Thank you very much.
And where can we find you on the socials, Glenn?
I'm the news at Glenn at Twitter. And Glenn Roger Moore on Instagram.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Glenn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.